Alright, so he's starting to get there. There's definitely some things we need to tweak. And a lot of this is also just eyeballing it to what you want, right? So we can see that his nose does this kind of thing like this. And his nostrils kind of come forward into the tip of his nose. So I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to add a little bit more to kind of bring that in like that. And I also want to tuck in some of the nostril there. I can only go so far with this because there's just not enough detail right now. But what I can do is just kind of, with what I have to work with so far, kind of, don't forget that smooth, the shift. Start to bring that in. This is too sharp. It's kind of, he has little duck lips here. We want to kind of fix that. So I could either go with the sculpting tool over that and just start to fill that up a little bit and then smooth it. Because I just want to get the indentation of it a little bit. And that smooth is really high, so I think we need to turn that down a bit. So that when we're smoothing, we're not losing all our detail. That's better. And we could see now I'm starting to get a little bit more just by working it slowly. Like I said, the biggest problem that people usually have is they try to rush way too quick into getting some of those details, and as a result, things go really wonky, you know, and you start to lose control over your sculpt way too soon. So he has a line. This should be a lot sharper in here. It should actually go right there instead of right here, which is what's happening. So this is where I'm going to use my knife tool. Oops, and let's tone that down. Start to give a slight indentation right there. Smooth that out. Maybe push it in a little and then smooth. So I can bring that line back up to here. It actually goes even further back, so we see that. But you see how it's like, I just want to give certain hints to it. It's more like right about here where it actually goes back to. So it actually goes back pretty far. Using the smooth again. I'll be able to get a lot more detail with this after I use a few more subdivisions to it. It's getting better. Gonna wrap that nostril like it is there. See? Now, depending on how much power your computer has, you're going to have different varying results of how much you can actually do and what level of density you can go to. If I'm trying to keep this to look a little bit more like a clay sculpt that's imperfect, and actually it adds a lot of nice texture, I can use the wax tool, or I can use the foamy and if I use the phone, let me bring that up. Just so you can see. So the foamy tool, you can see, gives me like just kind of puffs it and puts stuff on top. But if I use something like, let's say the wax tool, but then I use a stamp like this rectangle here, then you see what I can do is add a little bit of kind of texture to it. So depending on how I actually do it, and then when I smooth it out, it'll break it up a little bit so it looks a little bit more natural, right? So if I kind of control, go inside of here, build that up, smooth it, oops, smooth that out a little, it starts to give me just a little bit. And I could use this stamp if I ever want to reset it. Just hit reset and then turn mirror back on if you're like, what was the original setting? But if I could do that with pretty much any of these. Jeez, stop that. There we go. So I can turn on stamp spacing, where you see it kind of, that's actually nice, where I can actually pull in stuff. Oops, that's a little bit too much sticking out there. Looks cool, but he's not that jowly. So I'm just gonna push that back in a little bit. That's much better. Just soften that out a little. That's much better. I like that. So now I can start to, I'm using, let's use the foamy with this guy and a little bit of stamp spacing. And you can see I could start to build up a little bit in areas. Run a shift left mouse to kind of smooth it. But it gives me a little bit more breathing room for adding some of that definition that I might want. And it's just a matter of, once again, really controlling just a little bit, but it gives me a nice little texture to it that actually helps out. And I could just kind of go in and see that. So his head isn't perfectly like smooth. It actually has some indentation and stuff to it. And that's going to make it look a lot more realistic in the long run. I just run a little quick smooth, but you can see I still have that texture to it. So it's not 100% perfect, which is what I don't want. And then the same, well, what I don't want to have it to look perfect. And again, I can just kind of control left mouse to push in. And if I want to scrape off a little bit, this one's a little tricky, but say, oh, like right in here. Tighten that brush. And you'll see I actually can just, let me increase that a little bit so you can see what it's doing. I'm literally just kind of carving a little bit in. And I can use that to try and get some sharper edges as well. As with all these, you have to really just pay attention to where that little dot is where it's gonna like base things off of, and how big your brush is where it's going to affect it. And that's why you have to kind of take your time. Just to get the look that you want. Changing the brush size, changing the strength, doing a slower build up. Doing a little smooth to start to get that look. Now we can start to spend a little bit of time on defining the ears and the lips and the eyes as we get in there. But try and get as much of that as you can to start to develop the general details. But like I said, slow burn. Oops. Start to get where this stuff goes. The shoulder blades are here. Collarbone. And start to get those details building up more and more, getting those shapes.